Hey, how's it going, everybody? Shaun here from Zoobox. Going to take a little break from Christmas content. I got to go to a very special screening of the new Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man No Way Home. And just as a little preamble that I always do, just to keep everybody straight, how I feel about the MCU. I think most of them are very mediocre to bad. I think that their effect on popular culture and on the movie landscape and the kind of movies that get made has actually been pretty damaging, and it's a bummer because I would like them to be good. Like, I'm not a person that's like, I don't like them because they're popular or they're superheroes. I dislike them because they're just kind of mediocre. They're pablum. They're big budgeted television. That's what it feels like going to see a Marvel movie. Like, they're all kind of artless, contrived in ways that even go beyond kind of being in the comic book genre, in my opinion. There's a few that I've liked over the years, here and there. Usually they don't hold up to scrutiny, though. Like, if you try to watch them more than once, usually they don't hold up very well. But the reason why I wanted to watch this, I'm a big Spider-Man fan. Kind of have been since I was a little kid. Grew up watching the Spider-Man the animated series, and then in recent years, I got in. My son really responded to Spider-Man, so we've watched a lot of Spider-Man stuff, a lot of Venom stuff. He's been watching Spider-Man the animated series. The Sam Raimi movies, especially the first two, were huge, huge things for when I was a kid, and I grew up kind of just loving those. And those kind of showed you what the potential of those kind of movies could be, kind of pop art, pop cinema writ large. They're impressive. They hold up really well. I actually my son and I watched the original Raimi Spider-Man I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and it's so good. It's just a good movie. Like, beyond the fact that it's Spider-Man, I mean, it finds that right balance. It's just a solid movie. Period. End of story. And it's a lot of fun, and it's kind of it has fun with the comic book genre. It's a cool thing. All this kind of, for me, the character stuff, liking the character, just kind of goes back to my dad. So I like just tons of nostalgia for it. And I usually will always at least want to check out the Spider-Man ones, even the newer ones, which I haven't really liked. I didn't really love the last two. The one thing that I do like, though, I like Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I think actually all of the Spider-Men of the last 20 years have been pretty good. I think Tobey Maguire is great for those movies. I thought Andrew Garfield was appropriate for the movies he was in, even though I didn't really like those movies either. And I think Tom Holland is actually a very good Peter Parker, is a very good Spider-Man. If the MCU does anything right, it's casting, right? Usually some great actors they can get in there and wrangle and fucking slave them with a 50 movie contract or whatever. Those people are making money hand over fist. But they're dirty capitalists, They definitely went for commerce over art in that sense. But so I'm going to talk about just my general thoughts about the movie for like maybe 5 minutes or so, and then I do want to talk a little spoiler stuff. I thought it was fine. It was probably the better of the Tom Holland era, the MCU era Spider-Man movies. It was okay. Like, if I were to give it like a star rating, like say out of 5, I'd give it like 2.5 if I was being generous. If I was being grumpy, it would be like a 2-star movie. Which is to say that it's just baseline. It's just kind of mediocre. As people know, if you've watched the trailers and stuff, it kind of has this novel concept of the multiverse, which ends up not feeling as novel or feeling as original because the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse just kind of got there first. And they ate its lunch a little bit. So it's just not as impressive. But it was fun to see some of the actors come back to play the villains, even though I don't think they really did very much with them, in terms of the scripts. And one of the things that I found actually super distracting, like the whole time, it was clearly most of those actors that came back were not in the same room at the same time. And you could tell by the way they shot, because they would have them in singles, and only would they be together in wides, right? Because they don't want to do that extra effects work, because that extra time, extra money. So there's a lot of single shots of them, even when they're in a room kind of talking to each other. There's not like much interaction, and it feels very obvious. In my opinion, it felt very obvious, and I was constantly kind of pulled out. I'm just like, oh, what's his name? Django. Jamie Foxx was definitely not there. Definitely not talking to Alfred Molina most of the time. I think there's probably they had a few days where they were able to get together. I think. I'm not even sure. I'm not even positive about that. But it seemed like maybe they had a few days where they got just a few brief moments of the cast together. But it was just like it was kind of I was kind of just shocked at how they didn't do anything. They felt like almost tacked on in a weird way. Like it felt like a mistake as I was watching it, and I was like, "Oh, it's cool that these guys came back." And like Alfred Molina was especially, I would say, is the one that ends up being the most fun to watch. Willem Dafoe, again, it's because it's definitely shoehorned into a schedule. They definitely were not building it around that. That's another thing. They probably didn't know if they could get all these people, so they had this loose script. And I think even Tom Holland at one point was giving interviews about like how they didn't know how the story was going to end while they were making it. Like they were kind of feeling their way through the movie. In my opinion, I think it shows. I think it shows that they didn't really have a solid plan because nothing feels like built towards or earned in any significant way, because some of even the villains are supposed to have kind of like these mini character arcs, and none of it really rings true. J.K. Simmons back as J. Jonah Jameson. Hey, in any universe, I'm happy with that. I'm happy to see that. He's just taken on the Alex Jones vibe. It kind of like comes off like a sketch you would see in like Stephen Colbert, like Late Night with Colbert or whatever the hell that's called. Like that's or the Colbert Report, like that old show. That's kind of how it comes off as. It's a little caricature-y, which may seem like a weird thing to say because if you've seen J.K. Simmons in the other Spider-Man movies, the Raimi ones, but that's because it fits in that world. In this world, not as much, not so much. But he was fun. He was fun in the little brief parts that he was in, and I guess that's kind of my biggest takeaway. Everything felt so piecemeal because it felt like such like a corporate product, and they just did what they had to do to kind of get people there because they're recognizable and they can prey on your nostalgia without really having much for them to do. And it just kind of they felt superfluous almost. Like there's too many of them. I mean, they bring back more. There's a few other villains that get brought back from Spider-Man, for the Spider-Man movies. I don't want to say who they are, but they didn't need to be there. Honestly, like you could have just had two of them. Like if you just had Dafoe and Molina as Doc Ock and Green Goblin, and then you could have done like a story with them, like and have them be the focus, and give them character arcs, and kind of they do this thing with the characters in the movie, and like you could have done that, but they could have built it from the ground up, and it might have been interesting, an interesting juxtaposition in terms of the types of villains they are. Okay, so that's my non-spoiler parts. I think if you like the other movies, I assume that you'll probably enjoy this one. You may even think it's the best one. If I thought it was kind of the better out of them, but I haven't watched the other two in so long, I'm probably not a great judge of that, to be honest with you. But yeah, I'd give it like a 2.5 out of 5. End of the day, that's what I would say. All right, spoilers. We're gonna talk a little spoilers here. So, our boys, they're back. Toby is back. The other guy, his name is eluding me at the moment, and I'm in the car, so I can't check. I'm at Carline. Andrew Garfield. There you go. Andrew Garfield. They're back. The boys are back. They get pulled into Tom Holland Spider-Man universe, and as a novelty, it's cool to see them, but it also felt like a complete waste. A complete waste of Tobey Maguire, especially. And Toby come in and work for like 3 days. Holy shit. Like, Andrew Garfield seemed like he wanted to be there. Like, he was earnest. He gives a performance. He's in the suit a lot. Toby, not so much, dude. Toby's like in street clothes for most of the time that Tobey Maguire's in this movie. Which is like, just as even just the most basic bitch superficial level, fucking wildly disappointing. Wildly fucking disappointing. When I said like why I wanted to watch this, it was because of this. It was because of this. And I know that like the new Doctor Strange movie, I think Tobey Maguire might be in that. I'm not sure though. Because they're in it for like the last, say, 40 minutes of the movie. And if there's one thing about it that I did like, that they got to be like Peter Parkers. They got to be scientists, smart guys. That's kind of how they're divining the solution to their problem. They decide for some reason they have to cure everybody. They have to cure the ailments of all the multiverse villains before they can send them back. Or they think that's going to be the right thing because they have the capability and they're all about doing the right thing. It's kind of like muddled. And that's a lot of the movie feels like that. It feels very muddled and feels very like inconsequential and piecemeal. Like I said, you just feel everything feels fucking tacked together. And the main thrust of the story about like kind of Peter Parker developing the sense of responsibility and having to do the right thing. Basically, this ends up being like the origin story for like why Peter wants to be a hero. Even though it's the third movie in. Because Aunt May gets to give the line, with great power comes great responsibility, right before she dies. She gets killed by the Green Goblin's glider in classic Green Goblin fashion. And you're kind of just like, okay. I mean, somebody had to say that to Spider-Man in this version, this iteration. And I assumed it would be Aunt May, but you kind of just assume that happened. Like, because you know, when we meet Tom Holland's Spider-Man, he's already been Spider-Man. He's in high school, but he's already slightly established. And maybe you make an assumption about Uncle Ben. I can't remember. Maybe they are more explicit about it in like the first one, like Homecoming, but I can't remember. I don't remember it, like them ever addressing that, but she gets to give the big line. And so that ends up being this thing where he's like, oh yeah, I got to make a sacrifice. I guess I'm just going to have everybody forget about me. And that's what happens at the end of the movie. Everybody forgets who he is, so they can set the world right. Because if everybody forgets who he is for some reason, then the people from the multiverses, the string theory stuff, the other universes, won't want to come find him. It's so fucking paper thin and stupid, even by comic book standards. The whole thing with Doctor Strange, like, yeah, let me do this weird spell. Sure, Peter, I'll do a crazy spell. I'll do this spell and make everybody forget that you're Spider-Man. Because if you saw the last Spider-Man, was it Far From Home? When he gets back, he's outed as Spider-Man. And it's making his life hell. It's making his friend's life hell. So he wants to, like, erase people's memory of him. And then, as Doctor Strange is doing the spell, Peter's, like, saying, oh, but I don't want this person to forget me. I don't want this person to forget me, blah, blah, blah. And Doctor Strange is like, oh, no, Peter, no. It's like, it's so fucking stupid. It's so paper thin. It's so contrived. And then Doctor Strange is completely fucking wasted. I mean, I know, they're doing the Doctor Strange movie, and Benedict Cumberbatch is probably, this was around the same time, I think. Which, that's another fucking movie I'm probably going to end up watching because I really love Sam Raimi. So I'll probably end up watching Doctor Strange too, even though I don't particularly care for... I didn't even like the first Doctor Strange. I thought it was fucking boring. And this one I would not say is boring. There's enough things where you're intrigued, and it's also that nostalgia stuff. It's just like, oh, the characters from the other movies. I just kind of want to see what happens on this like very basic level. Like, that was what keeps you watching it on the most like I said, the most basic level, superficial level possible. But like, oh, it's just cool to see these people back in their costumes doing their thing. I could have done probably without Jamie Foxx. I don't think he needed to be there. Jamie Foxx is like a weak link with the villains. He's like so fucking bored. It's like he's like a different character. If you see Amazing Spider-Man 2, he's like this dweeby nerd guy. He becomes Electro. And he still is like insecure and a dweeby nerd, but in this one, he's like cool Jamie Foxx. It's so fucking stupid. It's so dumb. I really... You're just watching it and you're just like, okay, all right, whatever, dude. Whatever, who cares? Honestly, who cares at this point with this shit? But yeah, I can't say that I was disappointed in the movie because I didn't expect anything from it. It was cool to see old Toby back in the suit. It was even kind of cool to see Andrew Garfield back in the suit to a certain degree. Like, the idea is very cool, But because these people are all like massive celebrities, there's no way for them to like to wrangle an actual movie. It feels like a commercial. It feels like a product. It feels like a bobblehead or a Funko Pop. It's like the equivalent of a Funko Pop. The movie equivalent of a Funko Pop that you would collect and just so you can have them on your shelf and look at them. You know? And that like basic. That's fun because that you could just tell. You can tell that they did not have a script, and it was because they didn't know who they could and couldn't get, and they had to start shooting a movie. That's really the end of it. And it never ceases to fucking amaze me. These giant, $300 million budgeted movies. How often they shoot without fucking scripts? Holy shit! I don't know, boys and girl. I think like there's like a 10% viewership share are women. So hey, girls, how you doing? But yeah, I don't know. I don't know, guys. I know, like I said at the top, it's like it's not for me, and I accept that. So if you are into the MCU movies, if you like them, you'll probably like this movie. I'd be very shocked if you didn't like them, or you wouldn't like this. I think it's part and parcel with the rest of what they've been doing, especially in the past like 5 or 6 years. Most of the performances are pretty good. Jamie Foxx is kind of phoning it in. Tobey Maguire, unfortunately, is kind of fucking phoning it in, which is a little frustrating for me. Because I love Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker. I really do. It's nostalgia first and foremost. I understand that. But it's also just like there's a naive purity to the character that he was really able to get across in his performance. And I just really always loved it. Because he's a hero. He's like a principled nerd. He's like a hero because being a hero is just the right thing to do. If you can be heroic, you should be heroic. And it's nuts that it's 3 movies into the MCU Spider-Man ones, and like the 5th or 6th one the kid's been in, and he just learned that lesson in this movie. It's like, whoa. What the fuck? But yeah, I don't know, guys. I don't know. But I don't know, you might like it. You might like it. But anyways, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This has been Shaun from Zoobox, and we'll catch you next time. Probably a Christmas movie review also out today. You go watch that. Go watch that one. Go do it.